just said, I love my shop right there. You know, I was getting coupons telling me what she's buying. Dog food, see my dog, she does. So that's how bad they were. Even by using a card for shopping, they know everything.
Right, right. Oh.
What you're living on.
Please, you have a cell phone, forget it. They're tracking you, they're doing everything. I'll be honest with you. That's oh yeah, they track. Put it this way, if somebody with any power wants to zero in on you, exactly. Oh, I always say that. And again, I don't care, I'm not doing anything wrong, look at me. I am more offended by regular everyday people that think you have to give a shit what they do. Or think, right. Or thinking, you know.
Jerry Springer's been on for 30, 40 years. They're still watching it. They're still watching that nonsense. Jerry Springer, crazy movie about that.
Oh, God.
Cousins are with cousins. I'm sure cheating on their wife.
Yeah, but you know what? That's what people go get stoned, sit on the couch, eat a bowl of ice cream or a sub, and watch something mindless.
Or they sit in the living room and look out the window and watch all the neighbors are done.
That's me. That's me. No. I would like to sit home. I don't know what I want to do, but I do know I don't want to, whatever. I don't want a whiny little society. Everybody flies, everybody wants this, everybody wants that, everybody wants to go free. I don't want nothing from you. I don't want you to want nothing from me.
I'm going to say about the Ernst Road Realty Association, you're going to tell me that that's withdrawn.
I don't mean K-12. I mean, nobody. This is
Yeah, that's a good idea.
the only people that pay it, the rich people have to pay it, and the poor people,
Good evening. You could all rise.
they all get it for free.
Backing on if you remember this is a pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can have a moment of silence for all the people in Mexico and in Puerto Rico for the devastation that they've just taken the last 2 days. Thank you. Madam Secretary, are we in compliance with the sunshine laws?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a roll call?
Mr. Bello.
Here.
Mr. Hudkevich.
Here.
Mr. Davis.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Ms. Lee is not here. Mr. Lembo.
Here.
Mr. McEnone. Miss O'Leary.
Here.
Mr. Velosin is not. Miss Viantella.
Here.
Mr. Ty.
Here.
Mr. Rogoff.
Here.
Mr. Cornell. Mr. Leon Cavella.
Here.
Ms. Lee and Mr. Velosin called in. They had work, so they're excused. Memorialization of resolutions. We don't have any. We need a motion to accept the minutes from last month's meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions on those minutes? If not, I'll have a roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll accept the minutes for the last month's meeting. We're gonna go out of turn here because we have a couple applicants that didn't show or didn't, and one that's gonna be real quick, and then we're gonna get into the ordinances. So, we were supposed to have the 901 Ernst Road Realty Association come before us, but our attorney's gonna speak on that matter.
I received an email communication from the attorney for the applicant, Saraville Nursing LLC, otherwise known as Briarwood, indicating, this is actually a letter to Pat Gargiulo, the secretary, indicating that at the end of the letter it says, please allow this letter to serve as notice that at this time my client is withdrawing the application. It was previously scheduled for September 7th, then adjourned to September 20th. He was going to request that it be adjourned to November 2, but at this point, as of his letter of September 20, he's withdrawing the application.
And that's that.
That's that.
Okay. We've had the Pure Event if they could come up, please. Original hearing for a bulk variance approval, memorialized 6/13/15, return removal, restrictions of a number of public events, 6 months or 4 events, extend additional 6 months until 10/5/16, and is returning to determine if it shall be considered or considered permanent. You want to introduce yourself to the board?
Yes, Brian Lorenko, Pure Event Center.
Microphone?
Give it a little back.
Tick, tick.
I gotta swear.
Brian Lorenko, Lourenco, Pure Event Center.
All right, just so the board understands, I'll give you a little background on this. I've read the 2 previous resolutions that were adopted in connection with this matter. October 5, 2016, and June 3rd, 2015. The resolution of October 5, 2016 indicates that the applicant can return within a year to inform the board that there are no complaints from police or the neighbors. He was told, I reviewed the minutes, he was told he didn't need to bring a lawyer, and if those were satisfactorily considered by the board, that he would be granted unlimited approval, whatever that means. Certainly, we're not bound by the comment that he doesn't need to bring an attorney. When I first got a hold of this, I was concerned that he didn't have an attorney because he's a corporation, and corporations are generally required to appear by counsel. However, after I read the resolutions and the minutes and spoke to Mr. Alfieri 3 times today, the witness is not going to really provide us with evidential information from witnesses, things that lawyers would normally do. He's just going to give us an update. If you're satisfied with what he tells you, that's fine. If there's something else that you need independently from the police, because he's going to tell you that, that's fine too. Once I get, it could be, subject to receiving something from the police that indicates it's consistent with what he's told us today, then I would get that and make that, and wait until I get that before I drafted a resolution for your consideration. So having said that, sir, you want to raise your right hand? You swear the testimony you're about to give the board in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, he's all yours.
Okay. How you been doing?
Been doing well. We've been pretty much running the events as we have since we started in the very beginning. There were some issues that we remedied and corrected and dealt with. As far as any issues with the events, as far as legal issues, there have been really none. I spoke to Lieutenant Brennan from the police department today, just figuring they would be here, but asking him, this is just my testimony, I would certainly speak to Lieutenant Brennan, the chief. So he said, short of some noise complaints, which many of which happened at private events, bar mitzvahs, not my club nights, we'll call them club nights for now, no other issues.
Okay. You feel that you've upheld your end of the bargain?
I do.
Anybody have any questions of the owner of Pure?
Is the police department available?
Is the police department available? And they knew that the meeting was here tonight, so I guess they're,
When I called Lieutenant Brennan just to ask kind of if there was something I wasn't aware of so I could prepare for it, maybe if I would need my attorney, he indicated he wasn't aware of the meeting, and certainly confirmed this with him. They weren't aware of the meeting, so they wouldn't be sending somebody, but said the chief would be sending a letter saying as far as they're concerned they have no objection to the approval, but certainly again confirmed that with Lieutenant Brennan and the chief.
are you happy with the board's decision to wait for that letter to come from the police?
Making it just contingent upon that, no problem. I wouldn't expect you to take my word for that, sure.
Make it a condition of any approval that we do get that from the police?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no other questions from the board,
I have a question, Tom.
go ahead.
There was a conversation in the past about the fence in the rear and the people cutting through the fence onto private property. Has that been resolved with the fence? Is the fence now a solid
Yes, we installed the particular neighbor that had an issue with the fence, I believe is here. We installed a brand-new chain link fence, padlocked. The one event we had right after we installed it, which was, this came up in the last meeting because it was over a year ago, a neighbor who lived in that area actually still walked and jumped the fence. So besides the fence now, we stationed security at the fence to make sure so I don't believe we've had any foot traffic problems with people coming through that fence since that,
far as you're
which
aware,
was brought up the last time I was here.
There's been no issues then with
As far as I know, none.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
There was also a discussion, I believe, at the previous meeting that for parking, you were going to park across the street at the club directly across from yours and also down in the vicinity of the old Club Benet, somewhere down in there.
No, when we originally came, we had asked if that were a possibility, and we were told no, so we've been keeping everything on our property.
Okay.
We do
but
not
the-
use the Deco lot or the Benet lot.
Okay,
for-
but the question was, if the volume of people leaving the club, if it became that way, how could you get them out onto the highway? Or
Well,
how
we-
could people get their car with a valet or whatever?
No, I'm saying all cars are parked on our premises.
Okay.
So our capacity was reduced initially from 1,800 to 600 because of my limited parking.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, once our lot is full, which our events never fill up, but if they ever would, it's lot closed, move on. So no one can arrive on foot, and once the lot's full, we're at 500 or 600 people anyway, which again, our events are doing 150 people.
Okay, but we did discuss that at the meeting about parking at different venues.
It was brought up, but it was denied, so we were
Very
never...
good. I just want to go over it for the record.
Yes, correct.
Okay? Mr. Chairman, I'm in agreement that, although the police department isn't here tonight, that we should wait for at least some testimony at the next meeting or a letter from the chief stating that there have been no noise issues or complaints from the residents, et cetera, et cetera.
And I don't have any problems with that, neither does the applicant. If there's no other question,
And just to clarify, like I said, I believe he said there have been a couple of noise complaints in the last year, so I don't want to go on record saying there was none, but he said the frequency were very infrequent compared to what he would expect, and many of them came on nights where we weren't doing public events, because we were always doing like bar mitzvahs,
I
and
just
sweet
think
16s.
for the
Right.
board's purposes that I'd like to know what went on and
Sure.
what was reported. Okay,
Absolutely.
maybe benign, but I would just like to know personally. Okay. And so
I didn't want to represent that I said there have been none. I believe
Very
there
good.
have been some.
Okay.
there's no more questions from the board. I'd like to open it up to the public. If anybody in the public that has any concerns about the Pure establishment. Ma'am, go ahead.
Well, ma'am, you gotta come up,
Come on, you
please.
gotta come up, state your name and tell us who you are.
Jill Polony, 1983, Route 35. I'm
Ma'am,
just
could you raise
curious.
your right hand, please? Swear the testimony you're about to give the board in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. I'm just curious, is there 600 spots that are allotted in that parking lot? Because, to be honest, it doesn't look like there's 600 spaces for 600 cars at one time. And my property's always has garbage on it. I'm tired of calling. I've been dealing with this for 25 years. And I've been here numerous times. And though the noise has been better, it's not definitely quiet. You could come over and stay the night and listen for yourself. But there is garbage, and I do not believe that there is 600 parking spots that are going to be parked and not running through my yard like there have been in the past.
The engineer just gave me a map, and the number of parking spaces that they have is 280.
What do we do with 300?
It
The
was-
capacity
it
of
was the
people is 600.
occupancy that was 600. The number of cars is 280.
So what if there's, people will come in separate cars? Not everybody's coming in one car, not 6 people coming in one car.
Well, the applicant just already testified that once his lot is full, he's done. So if he's running 300 people, he's got 150 cars there right now.
How many spots are allotted in that?
280.
280?
280, which gives him 3 people, gives him the 600. Okay? And as far as the garbage is concerned, I would call the town and the
Code enforcement.
the what?
Code enforcement?
The code enforcement, and see where that gets you, and if not, I would go to the mayor and council. Okay? I mean, that's your best relief. Okay. Sir, go ahead. Thank you, Jay.
All right, sir, you wanna raise your right hand? Swear the testimony you're about to give the board in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Chris Cirillo, live at 420 Brook Avenue. My question is, how long has this club been running as a nightclub, let's say? How many events have you actually had for a nightclub?
Total, since we've been in front of the board,
Exclude bar mitzvahs and all the other, as nightclub.
was Walker okay without being held to it?
That's why I don't think there's a whole lot of noise complaints. But you're gonna give them a permanent permit, which then will give them access every day of the weekend and week. I mean, that's why I haven't complained about it. That's why you won't see my complaints at the police department. I do hear the club. I live right behind the club. I mean, I'm on that dead end where the wooden fences in the corner. That's my house. So, I mean,
Is that the
My
I mean,
question,
I just don't understand. It's like, you know, they're looking for a permanent thing, but they're not running it as a nightclub. So it's like you're kind of, well, we'll skate by, get the permit, and then we'll just do what we want. That's what I'm worried about. I've lived there for 40 years, so.
I mean, the conditions are in the resolution that we passed the last time, and that's what he's living under now. You know, the noise ordinances, the fences, everything that we've done. There's not much more that we can do to restrict his business other than what we've done already.
When it was Abyss, I mean, I know, they put the parking by permit signs, I've dealt with the permits, the wooden fence that's been there, then there was a second wooden fence put up, now there's 2 of them. I mean, it's all great, but you're not running it as a club. My thing is when Abyss was there, I know what it was like. I called numerous times to have cars towed off the dead-end street so I can get into my own driveway, okay? My thing is this place isn't being branded as a nightclub anymore. So now everything's kind of calmed down. As soon as it starts to ramp up again, that's the same situation.
Do you want to answer that?
Again, this is gonna be a part of,
How this all came about, just to kind of refresh some people who are new, is it's really if you've ever been there, it's an event center. We do a ton of bar and bat mitzvahs, sweet 16s, 50th birthdays. When we bought the property and obtained a liquor license, and again, it's a big monthly cost to carry the place. We said, hey, you know, on nights where we don't have a bar mitzvah, but we have a dark Saturday, we'll have a disco night. We'll have this or that. But in order to do that, we couldn't just do that without going through this process, even if we wanted to do one. So our intention was never to become Abyss. It was to say, hey, if we can do 10 events a year on nights where we can't pick bar mitzvahs and bring in some money, and it's been our plan from here, we have bar mitzvahs booked for the next 2 years, so there's no plan to not do what we're doing. But when I tried to do our first one, not knowing about this was even necessary, the zoning officer contacted me and said, even if you're going to do one open to the public event, you need nightclub approval. So that's the only reason I've been believing. If I'd had to go through this process, I certainly wouldn't have, but it was told me it was necessary to do that, even to do 10 a year, 5 a year, 1 a year, they have to approve me, which was...
I just know how.
No.
I just know how it ran with teenage nights, then the problems. I mean, then they had Chrome down.
And the other thing we agreed to, if we get this approval, is to never do teen nights again, which is nice, because that's those who cause the problems, the 16-year-olds. The 40-year-olds generally come with their wives, they're out by 1 o'clock.
The resolutions has restrictions, and so does the liquor license. So it's never going to be like Abyss again. Okay? Anybody else?
They also never had that 600 person, they were allowed to put 2,000 people in that building when it was Abyss.
Yeah.
Which was a big part of the traffic problems in 35.
Well, that was part of the problem. Anybody else want to speak to this matter? Anybody else like to speak to this matter? One more time. Anybody else like to speak to this matter? Okay. All right. Motion to close the public portion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. What's your pleasure?
That's
You
good.
heard the applicant, you heard the people from the town. You've heard the applicant say that he would like to have this considered as a permanent basis. And I've heard people from the board say that they would like to have the input, at least a letter from the police chief saying that as of now, that they're being responsible citizens in the neighborhood. I'll take a motion.
I'll make that motion, Tom, that we wait for a report from the chief before we decide.
Okay.
We could make it a condition. You could.
We could make that a condition if we get that it is an approval. Is that all right?
That way he doesn't have to come back.
Yeah.
Have a second on that?
Second.
I have a question. Can I ask
Go
a
ahead.
question? If it is lifted, is it free reign, like if he wanted to
No,
become
no,
Club
no,
Abyss?
no, all the restrictions stay the same.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, so these restrictions of, I think it is, what is it, 6 months for events? So that's basically all we're voting on if we say yes.
No, he'll have,
No, he won't have to come back.
he won't have to come back.
No, but. the
Right, he won't have to
restrict-
come back, but that's the restriction?
The restrictions in the liquor license and the resolution are what bounds him to it.
What are the restrictions? I'm sorry.
I gotta read them.
I mean,
He won't be restricted in terms of the number of events that he can have there. That's the whole point of
Okay.
him having to come back a year when you approved it back in October of 2016.
But he has to.
Well, you weren't here. I don't think you were here, but
I think I was here, but anyway.
if you looked at paragraph 7B, it says, 1 year from the date of memorialization of the instant resolution of approval, the applicant shall be required to appear before the planning board to determine if said change of use shall continue in the future and be considered permanent.
Right, but is
That's
that
what-
change of use, so it's not, so there will be no number set on him, he'll just be able to have?
That's right. That's right.
I see.
That's correct.
But the numbers that are set are 280 parking spaces and 600 people in the event.
In a single event,
In
but
a
he could
single
have an
event.
event every night if he wanted to. In theory, right,
Good.
okay.
It says it right in here, there should be no restriction in the number of public events, and said events shall be managed by the applicant and not a third party.
Okay, that's what I thought. So in essence, if you wanted to become Club Abyss again, you really could.
No, you can't.
No,
Well, I mean, you could
because
have an event every single night.
You can come up to the
Can
mic.
he?
Well,
I just want to be clear so I know exactly what I'm voting on.
And again, just to bring it back to
one
layperson's terms, to
second,
give you a little
sir.
background, sure.
1 second. Okay, because the hearing is essentially closed. If he talks more, if you let him speak again, if you close the public portion, which is what you did, then we're gonna have to reopen it again, because he may say something the public wants to comment on.
So
So,
what's wrong with that?
there's nothing wrong with it.
I don't
I'm
have a
just telling
problem
you.
with that.
He's the
If
applicant, he
you
wants
want
to
to
I
speak,
thought he
we'll
wanted
open up the public again.
I'm just
Make a
telling you.
motion, open public.
Well, wait, go ahead and speak, and then we'll open the public.
Okay.
Again, so I believe the limit you're worried about is not so much the people per event, because that's clear, it's just how many events am I running, one a month or 4 days a week. So I don't know that it is restricted, that I couldn't run one every 7 nights a week. I certainly have no problem agreeing to, I have no desire to be at nightclubs, like I said, so I have no problem agreeing to some sort of, it'd be tough for me to say one a week, because there might be a particular week where there's a Wednesday of Thanksgiving and a Saturday, but, certainly no more than 4 a month. Like, I have no problem putting something like that in there. I have no intention, desire, dreams of being a nightclub full-time. So if that's a concern, I'm willing, like I said, I don't even need to offer this, but I have no problem offering it.
So you would agree, you would stipulate that you're not going to have any, what kind of events?
No, I'm saying, I think the
Club
concern is,
nights.
are they having,
Club
am I open
nights.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, every week as a club, which I'm never going to do. So I have no problem putting something like that in there permanently. Like, I don't want you guys to ever worry that Club Abyss is coming back. It's not.
Like
So-
more than 52 events, I mean, one a week.
Without saying one per week, I have no problem doing 52 events a year, which would be impossible to open 20, because again, any particular, I don't want to say 4 a month, because if 5 happens to fall in this month, I'm in, technical thing, but
Right.
I will never do 52 in a year. So if you want to put that in there, that's one a week. I'll sign off for that tomorrow. I can't imagine doing more than 15 a year. For safety, for my purposes, you want to say one a week, no more than 52 events a year, I have no issue signing to that. If that makes the board, the neighbors, everybody happy, feel better that I'm not trying to sneak something
No more than,
beyond everybody.
no more than one public or private event a week?
What I would
No,
ask
club
is say
nights.
52 public,
Club
club
nights.
nights, 52 per year, without saying per week, because in one particular week it may just work out where we could have 2. But that would be a rarity. But I wouldn't
Just
want to
talking
be
about public events.
public events, correct? Not bar
Have
mitzvahs or sweet
1,000
16s.
privates. You can have 1,000 privates.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure what everybody's talking about.
Right. This is only, as I understand, related to public events, club
Okay,
nights
Great.
as as we're all kind of calling it.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so Brian, when you interface with your clients and they sign contracts with you, is it indicated in your contractual agreement that you will not exceed, their party will not exceed more than X number? Would that be 600?
No, to be honest, but it's never been, we tell them we max out, because we do seated. It's like going to a wedding almost, but a bar mitzvah. So we can't do more than 250 seated for a private event. We could certainly add it to the contract. No one's ever come to me with a 600-person private event before, so I can certainly add that to my contracts. No, but I would not allow it, even though it's not my contract. If they wanted to bring 800, I'd say we max out. Even if they wanted to do standing room only, my capacity is 6, but we've never had that issue come up yet.
So Chairman, you understand what you need to do, obviously, to keep your business viable and to keep you from coming back here. He's complied with everything we've asked him to in the past. I'm assuming that if there were police complaints, and once they were notified it was a meeting, somebody would have called or said something, I would think, so.
I would think so.
You know, so you know what you need to do. I mean, if you don't want the residents to keep complaining, then you gotta do what you gotta do if you wanna keep that business.
Again, I just want the residents to be, I would have the same concerns as you, is that if there's a way we can put this in there with still me operating the way I've been and kind of giving them peace at night that I can't run a business or I can't sell it to somebody else who tries to run a business. So 52 events here, no nightclub could survive operating one night a week. So if that's a contingency that will, you know, make them sleep a little better at night, I want to be a good neighbor, I want them to have peace of mind, I'd be okay with that.
All right, if that's the case, I need a different motion. And I need to open up to the public.
Make a motion, we open to the public, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody want to speak on that, on the 52 weeks?
Sounds good to me. If they're gonna do it.
You like that?
Yeah, he's gonna say 1 a week.
Could you just indicate who you are for the record?
Jill Polony. If he's gonna say 1 a week and there's no noise, I'll give it a try.
Well,
You may do the
I'm not, he said no more than 52 a year, but some, but like Thanksgiving was a great example. Thanksgiving Wednesday, all the college kids are home, and then he might have something on Friday night because they're all home too. So that would be 2. So that would be 2 of his 52, you know, so then literally he only has 49 weeks to get the other ones in, so. Yeah, and as long as, you know, we're trying to, he has a right to run a business, but we want to make sure that the neighborhood's protected as much as possible, at least better than what it has been.
I hope so.
Okay. I need a motion to close the public.
Make a motion to close public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
What's your pleasure now?
Still the same. Let's wait until we hear from the police.
Do you want to add the 52 weeks on it?
Oh, yeah.
I would like to add that.
And the 52 weeks?
Kind of a compromise.
So, to make this a permanent thing, we're gonna need, 2 things. We're gonna need to change that to allow the 52, a year.
Public events a year?
Public events a year, and also we're gonna need the letter from the police chief.
And it's conditioned upon a favorable police report.
Yes.
Everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes.
If that's the case, I'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Bello,
Yes.
Mr. Hudkevich,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Limbo,
Yes.
Mr. McEnone,
Yes.
Miss O'Leary.
Yes?
Did you say yes? Mr. Ty,
Yes, and I have a comment. I'd like to thank the applicant and the residents for working through this. This has been a long, tedious process. We've held your feet to the fire, and I've got to commend you. You've done better than most down there. You know, keep up the good work.
Miss Mantilla.
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much.
Granted.
That's it, okay?
Thank you.
All right. We're going to go into the communication. We're going to do the 2 resolutions that the two ordinances. 363-17 reintroduced the housing plan element, and this was because there were some things that were missed that the council wanted, and John Leon Cavello, our planner, is going to go over this first.
Noise when you go there.
Okay, I sent you in an email my report dated yesterday, September 19th. And really what we're looking at here between the two ordinances are the differences. 366B-17 was the original ordinance that had 80% of the standards of the borough in the bulk of the ordinance requirements. So 20% were not, were deficient, and those dealt with minimum setback standards and minimum distances between buildings. The other ordinance, which was amended by the council on 9/11/17, ordinance 366B-17, amended as 9-11-17. The changes were that those deficiencies were brought up to the standards of the existing zoning ordinance standards, so that 100% of the standards were the current standards in the zoning ordinance. So there's the standards for minimum setbacks and minimum distances are the same as in the ordinance, and that was the directive of the Borough Council. So that Table A shows what is under Kaplan Site 1, Kaplan Site 2, and the current borough standards, and then the double asterisk on each of the lines for setbacks, which was the first line, for subset A, and the subset G had the other asterisk for the height, not the height, the distance between buildings, which is a function of the height of the building. So if you had a 35-foot building, let's say 1 times height would be, that requirement would be 35 feet. If you had 2 times the height, that would be 70 feet. So those were the changes made there. And I believe that Mr. Rogoff sent you a report also that gives some directive to that, and I'll let him explain that if he wants.
Well, here's my take on this. I think the key really for the planning board's purpose is the paragraph on page 2, where I explain historically how this came from the Borough Council to the planning board. 363-17, 366B-17 came to us on August 2nd. We considered it, sent the report recommending, making our comments to the council with respect to those two ordinances. Subsequent to that, they were considered again by the Borough Council on September 11. And particularly, the most important one was the modifications made to 366B-17, which modified the bulk standards that are normally associated with that zone. And they reverted them back to the regular bulk standards of the zone, whereas the standards for the bulk standards for the zone, in accordance with the resolution of the affordable housing case, were different. More intense, if you will. So the setbacks were less, building height may have been less, and things of that nature. They're all itemized in there. I cut and paste basically John's report where he compared the two, and I gave it to you side by side. Now, procedurally speaking, you already did this. You already made your comments in a draft report and sent it to the council. My opinion, or my advice, is that you can do one of two things. You can make certain recommendations with respect to the modification of the bulk standards that were made by Borough Council, or you cannot. You could simply rely upon exactly what you did on August 2. And that's what that paragraph says. It says that you're not really making a comment upon whether or not the changes to the ordinance are consistent with 3 court orders that are existing in that affordable housing case. And that is a subject matter that is involving further court action by way of an order to show cause that I read. It was 83 pages long, that was filed to compel the borough to follow the terms of the settlement agreement that was entered into by the borough, everybody else, all the parties, over a year ago. So the problem you have, the dilemma, I should say, that you have, is do you simply rely upon what you did on August 2, or do you consider that which may run afoul of 3 orders in the settlement agreement? My paragraph says you make no comment. You don't have to follow it. You could do whatever you want to do. You can say whatever you want to do. You can make whatever comment you want. And that's why in the roll call vote, because I drafted a draft report, after considering all of this and the historical process that you went through already, and in the roll call vote, I put in yes/no. So, because I don't want to presume what your opinions are. If you said yes to whatever this draft says, which basically sends it back to council to say, you know what, we already did this on August 2, and we don't have any further comment. In my legal opinion, that is a very clean way to satisfy your burden, your duty under the municipal land use law. And that's not to say, you can differ with my approach. You can. I'm just a lawyer giving you my legal advice on the procedural manner in which this went down and what you're now being asked to do again. And given my knowledge of the 3 court orders that have already been entered in this case, obligating the borough to follow the bulk standards that you already recommended on August 2.
That were in compliance with the court order.
That's right. What you did on August 2 is in compliance.
And what the council asked us to do to roll back these would put us in jeopardy of not being in compliance with the master planner?
Well,
And in difference to the settlement?
let me state that another way, because your approach is correct, but I would rather say that in my view, you did the dance back on August 2. And if you just remain neutral, it's the Borough Council's decision. It is anyway, because you are just a referral agency in this process anyway. And so what I did was, in this paragraph, I kind of alluded to the fact that you considered on August 2, you did a draft report, you sent it to council. And the changes that are made by for whatever reason, are not consistent with 3 quarters in this case and the settlement agreement. So it kind of puts you in a bit of a bind.
It doesn't.
But if you simply say that you have no further comment about what the council referred to you, since you already did on August 2, and you'll see the last couple of sentences in my proposed draft, which is my proposed draft. You could completely disagree. You could tell me, I'm not agreeing to that. I want it to say X. I want you to say this in the draft report, and that'll be for another day. But the second reading is September 25th for those 2 ordinances. We don't have the pleasure of that time. That's why you have a draft report in front of you now. So, it puts me in a bit of a dilemma, because I have to draft a report for you before you actually decide what you're going to do. And so if you decide this is not what I'm doing, then so be it. I can't do what I can do because I don't have the time. And that's fine. It's your decision.
Counselor, could I see?
So let me just finish, and then the last thing I have to say is that the planning board as a body offers no opinion on whether the amended ordinance complies with the development standards necessary to implement the inclusionary development set forth in the settlement agreement dated August 9, 2016, and the court's orders dated June 2nd, 2017, July 17, 2017, and the order to show cause dated August 30, 2017, entered into the litigation pending against the borough entitled in the matter of the application of the Borough of Sayreville, docket number MIDL 4010-15. That's my theory.
Counselor, could I just?
That's my strategy.
Can we have a copy of that? Because I don't have a copy.
John, you emailed this, but not all the pages were attached to this. The roll call vote wasn't added to it.
I didn't
My
get that.
report is,
That's mine.
he
That's
took
the draft
parts of my
report.
report and added it to his report.
So let me understand.
Maybe that was in my folder.
What we did on August 2nd with the bulk standards that we recommended, the council went ahead and enhanced those and made them.
Yeah,
Change the bulk
it
standard.
reverted. It took the bulks that you didn't have any real major comment with,
Right.
and reverted back to the regular bulk standards of the zone.
Right. So instead of looking at this from from the planning board versus the council, let's look at this from a Sayreville perspective.
Sure.
What's the best thing to do? The council's changing this for a reason, right, Mr. Lembo?
Yes.
What was the rationale at the council meeting? I did not attend the meeting.
Well, with
Thank
the,
you, Mike.
going back to the original bulk variances, it gives the residents a little more
Well, I
protection
understand
as
that-
far
that-
as the density that they're gonna
Right.
be allowed to build on the
Right, what the
site.
council's recommending is you're decreasing the density, be making more space between structures, those
Right.
types of things than what we recommend. So the council certainly has the prerogative to change the ordinance. So what do they want us to do? They want us to agree with it and send it back to them, and if something happens, say, this is what the planning board recommended?
No, it's not why it was sent to you. It's sent to you just like it was sent to you on August 2. There's no protocol that says they want you to agree to it. You're a referral agency, so it's just subject to your comment.
As experts in planning.
Sure, they can ignore whatever you tell them.
Right.
In fact, if you don't do a report in 35 days, they don't have to consider anything that the planning board had or might have said.
But was it changed in the first place to comply with the order?
The agreement in the affordable housing case, correct.
So it's almost like we, in order to comply with the orders, we had to change them. So what will happen?
Just the reverse. Yeah, that's correct. What you did on August 2
Was to comply with the orders.
is in compliance with
So-
all that affordable housing
So
litigation.
if we say, no, go back to what we originally had, then we're not in compliance with the orders.
No, we're leaving ourselves open for litigation.
Well, let me just back up to that so I can understand exactly what you asked. If you go back to what you did on August 2, those ordinances are consistent
With,
with
Compliance.
That's right.
which is what
The
I,
borough changed the standards and tried to revert them back to what it was before it was subject to the affordable housing stuff. So they made it less restrictive, so you can't build as many units.
which obviously I would want, but it's
No,
not
I
in compliance with the orders.
I totally understand, and no one should interpret what I'm telling you as my opinion. I don't make the decisions, you guys do. I'm just telling you
But
what
you
the
are the lawyer, and that's why I'm asking, is it compliant with the orders from the judge?
what you did on
or it's
August
not?
2 is compliant.
Right,
What's
that's,
in
that's
front
what
of you
I'm
now,
saying.
what is in front of you now, the amended 366B-17 is not.
Is not in compliance, right? And then
Now,
we
this
are
is not
open.
just coming from me, this is from Larry, I discussed this matter with Larry Sachs. Because when I got wind of the
No,
eight-
absolutely, it's hard to follow, and that's why I
I know.
try to ask, so I can make an informed decision, at least based on my understanding.
This is exactly why, some could call this a punt. What that paragraph basically says that you're gonna rely upon what you did on August 2nd. You don't have any further comment on what the council did. You don't. And that's why I included in here, the second thing is, you don't have any comment because, first of all, it's in litigation. Number two, and I wanna keep that out, And number two, so we're kind of walking the line here, and we're talking about stuff that's in litigation. We try not to do that in a public forum, because we don't want to bootstrap people who are handling the case for us, which is not me. But, so that is why I alluded in this draft report to the 3 orders and the settlement agreement that was made.
Well, it's almost my understanding, right, that we had to make the correct decision to be in compliance with the orders. Otherwise, right, you're subject to lawsuits and.
I'm trying to,
Well, it's already filed. It's already filed.
I'm trying to connect the dots.
Yes, sir.
What's
I
already
understand what we did on August 2nd. I fully understand what we did. And we sent it forward. Did the council direct the planner to change the standards?
John?
Did the council direct you to change the standards?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so what dialogue happened at the council as far as the attorney, Pat, when the council decided to do that, obviously the attorney, the borough's attorney, who's aware of the litigation, what was his advice to the council, that you should do this?
Would have
even though it's
advised
not-
them that it's not in
Even though it's
compliance.
not in compliance? What was that conversation?
The attorney didn't really give direction as to whether or not to do it or not. It was the council's opinion to do it.
And what was the vote on the
Wait
council?
a
Was it
minute, the one
unanimous?
council you're talking about, the council that didn't have anything to say was DuPont, and Sachs was not at the last
Yeah,
meeting.
Larry Sachs was not present.
Sachs is not in agreement that we shouldn't do this.
Right. He was
Well,
not present.
wait, that's too negative. Sachs is in agreement with the council or not?
Not.
Not.
He's in agreement that we should let August 2nd stand. That we're in compliance,
So am I.
and that's what we did.
I think he goes to court on August 26th.
Then I guess I have the $64,000 question then. If the planning board did on August 2nd, and I recall the meeting, that was in compliance with the court order, the attorney that's representing the borough in this litigation recommended we do that and not change it.
Right.
Could I ask why it's being changed? I understand the planning thing, but not putting aside the litigation issue. Could I ask that question?
You certainly can. And
Does it
again,
have an answer?
Yeah, the answer is the council is looking to try to decrease the density. Yes, are they on thin legal ground? Yes, they are.
I'm going to caution the members of the board to,
Stop talking about litigation, guys.
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Okay. Without that,
So what do we do, Chairman?
Can I say, can we all meet together? I was watching tapes at one of the council meetings, and it was brought up that, people should meet together because this happens and that happens, but nobody's on the same page. I mean, if there's such a big question mark in the air, I'd be more than happy to get in a room with everybody. This way, we
Illegal.
can ask them why they want to do that. We can, have the attorney there.
it's illegal, and one of
I thought-
my crutches about this whole process is we've been working for this process for a year and a half, and not one person from the council, other than Councilman Grillo and Mr. Lumbo, now that he sits on the board, have been involved in this process, haven't asked the planning board any of its expertise, haven't talked to either one of or any 3 of our professionals about what we've done.
Oh, really? I thought that they counseled the board as well. I know I rely on the engineer, the planner, and the attorney. They have to explain it to me.
Oh, they went out and hired their own planner for $17,000 to give you a plan not much different than Mr. Leon Cavello. She came up with a couple of extra houses in the Farland Guest House, which are iffy. We may not even be able to get credits for those. So,
I mean,
I would
it
like
is silly.
you
I'd
to,
glad
I
to-
recommend that you stay away from that issue.
okay. All right, so what we
Once
have
again-
before, I guess, so we can't speak about litigation. What we have to do is decide whether we want to make the plans, the changes that were asked by the council, or we stand by our August 2nd,
Make the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we stand by our decision of August 2nd meeting.
I'll second
I
that.
second.
I have a second.
Yes.
Have any questions under that?
Don't you have to open up the public before we vote?
Yes, we
Can't
do.
hurt.
Okay. Before we vote on that, we will open up the public and take public comment on this.
Make a motion, we open public.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Grillo, you want to speak?
If you
have questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to swear you in, sir. Raise your right
Councilman
hand.
Stephen Grillo, 8 Exeter Court, Sayreville.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, sir?
Be your right hand. Swear the testimony you're about to give the board in this matter is the
I never
truth.
have to stand on this side.
The
I
other
get to
way.
sit up there. Keep my seat warm, Mike.
Swear the testimony you're about to give the board in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Does anyone have a specific question?
Yeah,
Yes.
you sit on the council. Do you think this is a prudent thing, keeping it at the second, or changing the new ordinance?
1 second, Councilman. I'm going to caution everybody in this room, once again, not to touch upon matters that may bootstrap our lawyers that are handling your affordable housing case. Because you could conceivably, I don't know what you're going to say, give them ammunition in the current case that's now pending. Not just the case that's pending, but there's a motion, there's an order to show cause. There's an emergent application that has been signed. An order has been signed by Judge Natale requiring the borough to come back to court on the 26th and explain why sanctions should not be entered against the borough for all sorts of reasons. Some of which I have already alluded to. So I'd be very careful. You remember the governing body. My recommendation to you, sir, is you not say anything.
I have to listen
You're
into
not.
that. Let me ask you a question that will not rouse the attorney. You're a professional planner.
I am.
Did you vote to change this?
I had voted for, which is a matter of public record, I had voted to support the ordinances, all 4, that had been brought forth by the planning board. I was in the minority for the majority of that time, myself and Councilman Lembo. What had happened chronologically, and I think if we step back into mid-August, I think it was August 21st, but don't quote me on that, was that Larry Sachs had advised that we advance 2 ordinances. The most important one being the ordinance that relates to the Kaplan sites, the two Kaplan sites. That was the direction, and please, Mr. Rogoff, if I'm misquoting the judge, please let me know. But the direction from the court at that time was that that ordinance needed to be advanced due to time restraints. So we did that. There were a series of amendments to the ordinances that we had due to some questions about language. There was a Scrivener's error in one of them. But we muddled through the process and finally got to what we thought was an appropriate ordinance that we could introduce and return to the court as they had requested. At our last meeting on September 11th, it came up, I should say the meeting prior, it had come up from some of my colleagues, myself and Councilman Lembo excluded, that they wanted to see a difference in the bulk standards, as Mr. Leon Cavello explained previously. It was at that point that the council took action and voted to advance the ordinance, and I forget what the amended number was. We have literally amended it 6 times. But to advance that ordinance with the changed bulk variances to get it at least to the court. And I believe the logic, at least from myself, and I can't speak for my colleagues, was that the best thing that we could do was advance it to the court so we could at least be in compliance with the judge. We at least wanted to give him an ordinance that he could oversee, as opposed to just saying, sorry, we're not taking action. And so that's where we are today, in that we've introduced it for first reading with the bulk variances changed, but we have to wait until our next meeting to take action.
So you're telling me that this was sent to the judge already?
I'll defer to Mr. Rogoff, but that is my
I'm
understanding.
not involved in that. All I can tell you is that I read the 83-page set of pleadings, including the order show cause, 3 orders that were attached, the settlement agreement, the proposed ordinances, from the last meeting, the new meeting. So I'm not prepared to give you an opinion about that.
All I know in terms of the court, and I do believe this has been sent to the court, but I can't speak certainly.
When
but
you say this, what are we?
The ordinances reflecting Kaplan have been sent to the court.
They're all part of the pleadings, every single one of them.
So I do know that there was an adjournment. It was supposed to be September 13th. No.
October?
What was last Friday? September 15th?
25th.
15th.
15th.
And I believe that was postponed until the 26th of September, I believe you mentioned before?
I think, again, I'm not privy to
So
that
I'm
yet.
not, I don't believe these motions that have been made by Kaplan, the intervener, have been heard yet.
Yep, no, the pleadings have been considered and the order to show cause was signed. If you get a signed order to show cause, there's something going on. They're not easy to get. They're emergent applications to the court. Something serious is going on.
So as I said before, I can't speak to the court's decision. I certainly can't speak to the attorneys and what they're doing in terms of the adjudication. But to Mr. McEnon's question, that is how we arrived at this situation with the first reading.
My question was, did you support this?
I voted yes on the ordinance with the changed bulk variances. As I said, because I believed that it would be more appropriate for the protection of the borough and its residents to get an ordinance to the court as opposed to just throw our hands up and
I
say,
asked you
yeah.
not to put you on the spot because you're a planner, and I need, I'm not a planner, so I'm trying to do the right thing here.
As I mentioned earlier, I have been in full support since day one of the ordinances that were submitted to the council by the planning board when I sat on the planning board. I thought it was a terrific plan. I voted against having a second planner brought on. I believed it was an undue expense to the borough. However, when it got to this point, I felt that the prudent thing to do was to at least get the court an ordinance, even if I didn't think that ordinance was perfect, as I had supported a previous iteration, but I thought it was the responsible thing to do. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, well, then, my concern then for our planner is that he was doing what he was supposed to do in support of the attorney that was representing the borough during this litigation, and then he was told to do something differently from the borough council.
That's correct.
That's what I summed this up to be.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay.
That's all you have, Steve?
All right.
Unless someone else has another question.
Anybody else like to speak on this matter?
Thanks. Thanks for your
Anybody
time.
else? Thank you.
Close the public portion. Close it, close it, close it.
I'll
Make
close the
Make motion to close.
close.
Motion to close.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we have two options. We can stand where we were on August 2nd, or we can look at the proposal that the council wanted them to do that will put us in.
We have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, we have a motion and a second to
Can you review that, what it was? 'Cause
rely on the August 2nd decision of the planning board and take no further action in the matter.
I think that's essentially what the draft report that I drafted for you says.
So that's your advice?
I need two.
That
Any
is.
questions under that?
Okay.
Anybody have any questions under that, under the board? All right, I'll take a roll call vote on that. We're going to stand on August 2nd's ordinances, and we're not going to entertain what Mr. Leoncavello was told to do by the council.
Mr. Bello.
Now, just so you know, we're just gonna, I'm sorry. This is on the vote, the resolution's next, the draft report, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What are we doing?
First, you're voting on,
Voting to stand.
on that motion.
We're
Then
voting,
there's a draft report if you want
we're voting
to.
to do nothing, because we
Yes.
already sent the ordinance up to August 2nd.
We're going to go back to our decision of
Voting
August
to
2nd.
make no
right.
further comment.
Right.
Right. I think that's the motion.
Yes,
Yes.
I believe.
And rely upon what you did on August 2.
So my choices then are to
Yay.
support something that can possibly put us in legal jeopardy, or to vote against something that would decrease density, which is what we all want to do. That's the choice I have.
I don't know how to answer that.
I think more so, I think we were voting to decrease density because we had to, because by order of the court, we had to. It's almost like you make you want to make no comments, but with making a comment that we never seem to have enough time to fully discuss it. Like we get here that night and then that's it. Because it's always a time constraint and these are your choices. We're gonna get sued if you vote this way.
But the time constraints aren't ours. The time, we've acted.
Not at this
in-
point.
We've acted in a prudent manner. They had this in April. There was no time constraint. They put it upon, the council put it upon themselves. They waited to act on this until like the last minute, because they thought it was gonna go away. Be neutral, okay.
So we're standing by our decision.
Yes.
I am.
Yes.
I think we should have a
We
roll call.
got a roll
that's
call,
all.
Have
yeah,
a
but
roll
yes.
call?
Yep.
Mr. Bello,
Yes.
Mr. Hudkevich,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Lembo,
Yes?
Mr. McEnon,
Yes. Doesn't make a difference, because this council already made the decision, so why are we wasting our time?
Miss O'Leary,
Yes,
Just,
exactly.
we practice
We're not
bleeding.
wasting our
Exactly.
We practice
I'd like to
bleeding.
make a comment. I'd like to thank the board for their due diligence. I'd like to thank our professionals. I think that we, as a board, acted above and beyond as lay people with the breadth of the information that we had to cover. And I thank you all for doing a great job. So I vote yes.
Miss Mantella,
Yes.
We need to move, take a vote on the draft report.
Go over that.
Does anybody have any other questions beyond what I already told you about the draft report? So, if there isn't, then
We need a motion to send the draft report back to the council.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
I get a second?
I'll second
But that's what we just did.
All in favor? It's the draft of what we just voted on.
well, you voted on a motion to do something.
Okay, so we voted on
This
the
is the
motion
draft
not to do
report that
something, and
explains
now-
it all.
And
That
that's
has-
the paper that's gonna go, say
Correct.
we
This goes to
stand
council.
behind our
This goes to the
August.
council.
Okay.
I need a roll call vote to move this to council.
Mr. Bello,
Yes.
Mr. Hudkevich,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Lembo,
Yes.
Mr. McEnon,
Sure.
Miss O'Leary,
Yes.
Miss Mantella,
Yes.
Mr. Ty.
Yes.
So that's adopted.
That's adopted.
You see, can I make a comment? This is exactly what the problem is, and the frustration people have. They go to council meetings, they come to this meeting, they may go to Sarah meetings, they go, and it's this conflict, this disagreement, it's this, we're not communicating with each other. And I'm looking at an older minutes here, where it says, Mr. McEnon, which is me, stated he has suggested a number of times to work with other agencies and Sarah to get on the same page, okay? And it's always been my take on a team saleable philosophy. It's better to work together than to be alone, and this is the problem. This is why we're facing litigation and all these other things that are going on, and we're in a situation we're in. Okay, and I think we're just doing a disservice. That's the problem. Right here in the minutes. I made it several times mentioned. And this is, no-win situation. Okay, because we just, because come back to us to say, well, the planning board was in agreement with it when we get in legal jeopardy. Yeah, it's just, I see it coming. It's the silly season right now.
And we're gonna be thrown under the bus again.
It doesn't,
We acted in a legal manner here, so I don't see what the
I'm
problem
not
is.
saying we didn't act in a legal manner. I'm not
Can
saying
we
that.
meet with the council? I mean, you said that's
we don't
not
have to.
legal?
Well, it's an us versus them mentality with certain people, and that's the problem.
Like,
That
could-
doesn't, it
We all
it
can't just
does-
meet in the
it
same
doesn't-
room?
It doesn't serve the public.
No.
It absolutely, positively does
Really?
not.
That doesn't make sense.
Yo. Through the chair.
Out of order.
But I agree with that, so.
I would just like to ask our attorney, why is it you feel it's illegal for us to have that meeting, to have the planning board attend the joint meeting?
I wouldn't use the word illegal. It's very strong.
Use the mic,
I
Counselor.
think it's inappropriate.
Okay, then why is it inappropriate?
It's always inappropriate for a member of a zoning board or a planning board to meet in a public forum and discuss, number one, litigation that's in the courts, and number two, pieces of property that may come before you in the future. And so someone could argue that you've prejudged this matter, you've got comments on the record, you've been in a public setting,
Now, you said a formal setting. Obviously, we couldn't meet in an informal setting. That really looks shady, right?
what's that?
you couldn't meet in an informal setting. Like you said, we can't, so we can't meet at all, so how are you supposed to be on the same page?
Well, that's why we have
and talk?
liaisons
It's
on
not
the
that
board.
anybody's against anybody, but sometimes things are brought up, like when I watch the tapes of the council meetings, things are brought up and you say, oh, I didn't think of that. It's not because I didn't want to think of that, it's not because I was ignorant, or it's not for any other reason, but like anything, you go to things to hear things and get new ideas and open up to both sides and then make your best decision. So maybe the best decision is made when you can hear all sides.
I
So
get, I get that, and I understand it. The problem is, you're a public body, you're a public agency, and you're bound by rules. One of which is the Open Public Meetings Act, one of which is the municipal land use law.
So it really is a law that we can't, because I mean,
Yeah,
I heard on the.
you cannot meet informally in a public forum and discuss agency business.
That's so crazy, because we're all on the
It's
same
not-
side.
it's not
We're all on the
crazy.
same
It's
side.
not
It should be a formal meeting.
If you had a formal meeting, and you can do a formal meeting, public notice,
But
there's nothing wrong.
That's what we
there's-
want to do.
Proposed, though.
No, what's being, my understanding, I don't really want to discuss this really, because, you know, again, I would prefer that we not air this kind of banter in a public forum, because somebody somewhere is going to try to use it against me, or against you, because you've been sued.
This isn't about the lawsuit, this is just about getting the governing bodies together, the advisory bodies and the
I don't
governing
even know
bodies.
what the lawsuits
You can
are.
get Sarah, you can get the housing authority, you can get your planners, you can get your lawyers together. There are other people that you can get together that are armed with the information that is essential to get together on the same page with this stuff.
Our indication was to send the planner to that meeting,
And that's
because
what we
he
did.
has all the information. That would leave us, innocent of perjuring ourselves or saying something that we shouldn't. He's a paid professional, he has all the information.
And he
It's
doesn't
not-
vote.
And he doesn't vote, so he doesn't have a deciding on an application that comes before us. From the people that I've talked to, that would be the way to go. We're not, again, anybody that comes before us, we ask at the end, we give them an opportunity to speak, and we go over everything that we can. It's not like we're hiding anything. We're just trying to protect ourselves so it doesn't come back. Remember with the Mako thing, I mean, we didn't give him proper notice, and look where that ended us up 20 years later. So, we have to cross our i's and dot our t's. I'm going with what our legal attorney, our legal advice has told us. We have two communications agenda. We received a letter from the municipal clerk dated June 28th, 2007. The planning board, John, and you're working on this, the borough-wide analysis of unused vacant lots and historic properties provided by the governing body with a report from the planning board. And the other one is a letter to the municipal clerk saying to me, to the chairman, so they can, the planning board the zoning analysis for Route 35, authorizing the planning board to conduct a study of Route 35 Morgan section between Bordentown Avenue and Cheesequake Park, and find its reports to the governing body. Now, our attorney gave us some information. These are great. They're not, these are both from the municipal clerk. Problem I have is, it doesn't say who's gonna pay for these two studies.
Well, who's gonna do it, and who's gonna pay for it?
Well, John's gonna do it.
It's not in the referral to us, and those are the first two questions I had. Is this being done in-house, or is there a planner being retained outside? And obviously, if it's an outside planner, there has to be money allotted to pay for that individual. Those are the questions I had, so.
But there was no discussion of hiring an outside planner to do it, so the assumption would be it would be done.
By Mr.
Yeah,
Leoncavallo.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Grillo introduced these.
Right.
Still Steve Grillo, right? Still
Still
Councilman?
Steve Grillo, haven't changed my name. It's nice to see all of my colleagues again from last year's planning board. Unfortunately, I was removed from the planning board for some political payback, but Chairman Ty knows what that's like, unfortunately.
It
as
helps
well.
the town, doesn't it?
Nonetheless, I'm happy to be here, and I want to thank you all for your hard work, as I mentioned, on the affordable housing. I thought the plan we presented was extremely sound. And what we're here to discuss tonight are two resolutions which I advanced at the council, which would be essentially supplemental opportunities to consider for our affordable housing. The first one being a potential rezoning of Route 35 in Morgan to encourage mixed-use development. I can get into the details of that if the chairman would like. And the second one is an adaptive reuse study to do an inventory and analysis of unused, vacant, and historic or underused buildings throughout the borough, which could be converted to residential space, with the intent that both studies would have an eye on potential affordable housing opportunities, not only for this present litigation, but anything else that should come up in the future, that we would be able to understand what our affordable housing opportunities would be. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions of the councilman?
I have a question unrelated to what you just talked about. The other planner that was hired by the council, what was the product that was produced? And what did it say?
The plan that she had proposed or put forth was, if I recall, about a 4-page report looking at some different credits that we could receive in other parts of town. I think we had talked about the Parlin Guest House. There's in addition to some of the inclusionary apartments on Washington Road. It's just a slight uptick, if I recall, in the number of units. But the main conclusion was that she removed the National Lead site from the affordable housing plan. So the significant number of units that would have been located at National Lead now are no longer in the affordable housing plan. So obviously we have to relocate those units somewhere else. That conversation happened after these recommendations which I made, which were to the special master, Betsy McKenzie, at a meeting that we had on July 1st. I proposed these two options. The special master concurred that those were probably good steps for the borough to take in terms of long-term planning. And so I'd asked the council to advance it to the planning board for your review and questions, and that's why I'm here tonight.
What was the rationale of moving them out of the National Lead, the credits for that?
I don't know.
We paid $17,000 for that.
Yes. And I voted against
Didn't we
it, just
talk
for the
about-
record.
Yeah, but I'd just like to see, if with the planning board, shouldn't we see this alternate plan? I'd like to see how much it varies from what our planner did. I mean, is that unreasonable?
Have you not seen the plan?
Can we
No, but
request it?
this is litigation again, and I think we
Everything,
wanna,
well,
I think we wanna stay away from this
I'll just,
discussion.
send me home then, you know? Can't talk about anything.
Oh.
It's fine, all right,
I have
let's
a question.
press on.
I mean, it is public knowledge that we did remove the National Lead site, because that was part of the ordinances that we introduced.
I'm asking why that was done.
He doesn't know.
And we don't know.
There was contamination issues there. I think that was one.
There's always been contamination issues. There's National Lead. Yeah?
Mr. Chairman, if I might
The
just
best-
jump in. I
the
think
best
Mr.
property
McEnroe was
that
talking
they're
about the
talking about?
National Lead property where the redevelopment is
Yes.
proposed. This is referring to the National Lead owned property in the Melrose section.
Oh,
Across
okay,
Avenue.
okay.
So there's a
Okay.
difference.
Thank you,
Okay,
Jay.
I understand that. And I'm agreeing
got
with
it?
that. I agree with that.
It's not the point.
Okay,
It's behind Casa Verde.
okay.
Yes.
And I agree with that. I mean, I get that.
That's the,
May I just make a statement?
You have to come
We
up
haven't
with-
opened the public portion. Did we open the public?
No, well,
I just want to clarify for him.
we'll give you that.
well, I'll give you a question. Steve, are you done?
I had one question for him.
Go ahead.
You had said, potential rezoning of Route 35 to more like residential?
Yes. So over the last year, I've been working with residents in Morgan. We've actually created a community group called the Morgan Community Alliance. And we've been working on a lot of quality of life issues. The code enforcement has been really great in dealing with some of the construction issues and littering and some other quality of life items. But we've also now, and we're actually starting tomorrow, which I'm very happy to report, is the Rutgers Graduate School of Planning is going to be coming in to do a comprehensive plan for Route 35. And what you guys might not know is that the second most common land use on Route 35 in this district that we're talking about is vacant buildings. So there's clearly an economic development and business problem on Route 35. There's a density question. And so I think that an appropriate and responsible way of going about this to increase the benefit of the properties that we have is to look at how we can encourage residential, mixed-use residential development. So we've got commercial on the first floor, residential on the second floor, some iteration thereof depending on the site setup. That'll bring more people to the district. Hopefully we'll bring in businesses. But what the zoning change needs to be is, and I think we have to get very deep into the weeds to understand how this can be done. This might have to be site-specific, but we need to encourage developers to want to go to Route 35 and to want to build buildings and to want to encourage residential development and commercial development. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have what is really a dying part of our town. And so that's why I advanced this resolution. I think it's responsible long-term planning, but I think it ties in well, and it's a good chronological piece here in that we now have an opportunity to put in affordable housing in an area that needs housing. Hopefully that answers your question.
Does. It
How many
makes me
units
think
did we
about a lot
lose
of
in a
things.
Melrose section? Affordable
Can't tell you off the
housing?
top of my head.
You don't know? It wasn't a big number, though.
Jaden, do you recall?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How many units did we lose by taking out the Melrose section for the affordable housing?
Affordable units or total units?
No, affordable.
I believe it's 24.
Yeah, so it wasn't a big number.
No, and I don't think that Route 35 should become a haven for affordable housing. I think that affordable housing should be...
That's not what I'm saying.
Right, it should be a component of a larger residential mixed-use redevelopment for that district.
You make,
So that's what I'm asking to perform in this
you
resolution.
make a lot of sense to me.
Thank you.
And you're on the council, you're a professional planner, but you're not on the planning board. No slight to Ms. Lembo, and I know why you're here. See, that's the problem. That's the problem.
No
I
one wants
agree. I
more
would have been happy to sit with you
development
for a year
school
two.
children.
You know, we get involved with this nitnoid stuff, and the best decision is have somebody with your knowledge, the way you could articulate things. Route 35 has always been neglected. That's why a lot of businesses don't survive there, because you don't have the residential component for that. Okay? And, you know, and you should be here at these meetings, and you're not because of somebody you pissed off. I don't know.
Well, I'm always at your disposal.
This is
for
what
any
we have to
questions.
deal with, you know?
Mr. Grillo, in your meetings with the residents, I know you've met with them a number of times, they're on board with the mixed-use plan?
Yes, they are. I think, you know, the big issue is that they recognize that vacancies are the problem. You can't attract businesses to an area where clearly businesses have failed, right? No developer wants to go into a district
But
where
there's
they
no
see
customers, yeah.
no customers and they see vacant buildings. So that's part of this rezoning is not so much, I mean, I think a zoning question needs to be answered in terms of this B3 zone, and there's some waterfront zoning, and we need to analyze those better. But we need to think about how do we encourage and incentivize developers to want to go to Route 35. There's a marketing component. There's certainly a potential expansion of the redevelopment zone in Morgan, which really today only covers Morgan Bluff and the Club and A site. Could it be extended further down the road to incentivize developers? Or do we want to talk about site-specific incentives? And so that's what I'm asking the planning board to authorize a study to look at. And I would be more than happy to assist Mr. Leon Cavello in any way that I can.
I think that's
Is
a great idea.
Rutgers performing this like for free for you as a community benefit because these are school?
Correct. So on behalf of the Morgan Community Alliance, I had reached out to the Rutgers School of Planning. I did this when I did my planning degree.
Oh, is that where you got it from Rutgers?
No, I got mine at Hunter College, but we did the same thing. Everybody has to do what they call a studio.
that
And so
was
you go out in the
smart.
field for 6 months and you come up with a redevelopment plan. And it's all for free. So you get graduate school work for free. So I'm very, very happy that we're able to do this for Morgan. I think it's going to be a great product. And Mr. Leon Cavello can certainly liaise with them as well.
Good job. I like it.
Can I?
I love it.
Are these redevelopment studies?
Second one, is that a redevelopment study? You just say study.
214?
I don't see a number on there.
June 28th.
It's the municipal.
There's 213 and 214. Which one are you referring to?
Oh, I'm looking at the agenda, sorry, You're talking numbers here. Oh, yeah, we're okay.
So we need to have a voice vote on both of these tonight? So we can ask the planner to do these two studies?
Yeah.
Is there a timeline on that?
John, do you have a timeline?
This is Hercules.
I mean, how long it would take?
I'd like to talk a little bit with Steve about it, and we may for mapping, we may wanna use, our engineer. So I'd like to have,
Can we do this at the next meeting?
I think it's a wonderful
I
idea. I
make
just
that
don't,
motion.
is that part of your scope under the realm of being the planner and
Sure.
being up here, or is that
Yes, we do.
additional fees?
Oh, we've done this before.
redevelopment studies before, and, you know, this is obviously
That's what I
something
mean,
that
it's
is
already like paid
important,
for in the yearly,
and, I think it's something we should address.
or is it over?
And I thank, Mr. Grillo for his, advice
it-
and time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that
It's great.
motion then to do
Well,
that.
I don't think this is a
It's-
redevelopment study.
It's
All right.
not a,
I
it's
just
a
wanna know-
planning study. It might turn out to be a part of a redevelopment study.
And in terms of the timeline, I think it would be prudent to wait for Rutgers to finish their study, which would be, I suppose, towards Christmas time. It'll be one semester. So I think Mr. Leon Cavello should certainly interface with them, but I don't think there's any point in finishing his work before they have a finished product.
No, I
because-
think that's good, this way
Yeah,
you
I
can
don't
get a
think there's
look
a
at
rush
it
for
too,
that.
right? And,
And we've had, the borough has done some other studies with Rutgers.
oh, really?
And they're important, and they give insight to a number of things, and then we can utilize them as best we can.
Wonderful.
All right, we've been charged by the Borough Council to do this, so we don't even need a vote on this. We're gonna zoning and analysis of Route 35, and we're gonna have a borough-wide study of the historical projects and empty buildings for our best use. So that we're gonna do. We are gonna, in a timely fashion, to answer your question, we'll try to do this in a timely fashion with Mr. Grillo and the engineer and the planner coming up with recommendations for both of these.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I wasn't pushing the time, I was just, you know,
Yeah,
this way,
I'm
everyone knows
one of those kind
about.
of people that likes to know, tell me that it's gonna take 3 months, so when it takes 4, I'm not really mad.
Well, it's just good to have in your head exactly about
Okay.
how long it takes.
Thank you all very much. Nice to see everyone again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Steve, thank you.
Favorite part of the meeting.
I'm excited.
Old business, new business, administration business,
And you made a comment that Sarah was,
none?
I'm good.
Old business, new business, administrations, none. Public portion, anybody like to make a comment on the public portion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we open the public portion.
Okay.
second. What's that?
Thanks for being patient.
No, fine. Council said,
There should be a button on it, George.
But if this is the mayor's board,
yeah, but not for the council members. The council decides who reports.
George Podolak, 48 Scott Avenue, the Melrose section. I'd like to just clarify the portion that they're talking about that is owned by National Lead.
Right, right.
But it's also known as Georgette's Hill. Okay? Where Costa Verde Restaurant is, that was Georgette's Restaurant back in the 40s and the 50s. We used to sleigh ride down that hill. The point is Melrose lower section, also owned by National Aid. So the one what they're talking about, I think, is Upper Melrose. Route 935 divides Melrose, for those that don't know. You have upper and you have lower. So I just wanted to clarify
That's
that,
good. I didn't know
that's
that.
the point that they're talking about.
Right.
Georgette's Hill.
Which I'm in agreement of.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comment from the public?
So that little
Anybody else have any comment from the public?
National Lead owns.
Hearing none, I'll close, take a motion.
Make a
close the
motion to
public.
close public, Mr. Chairman.
Make a motion to close, all in favor?
Where they wanna build- where they wanna build all those
Next
houses.
meeting is October. What? Our next meeting is October 4th. We don't have anything on the agenda, so if we don't, we will notice you and let you know.
This is great. Let's do this again sometime.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, public,
Mike.
for coming.
I like that guy, Steve. His name is Steve?
Yes, Steve Quillen.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
professional planner.
gotta send the draft report.
That's been adopted.
We've invited Sarah here to come.
Those two studies?
I was
You
gonna
don't
say
have to
that, we
wait.
never invited, they don't give a shit.
That's John's fault. That's John's ballpark. He's gonna, no, he's gonna do the studies. and when Sarah's
Nobody asked
done-
me, so
What's going on with
he's
Sarah?
gonna do the studies.
Yeah.
Did you get that paper?
Well, if we-
You want that paper? You got it?
Right now, Pat, you don't have to
You
do
got
anything.
these too, you're good.
Okay, just send the report. Get going.
Patty, thank you.
They're not even talking to you anymore.
I'm hungry. Now, is that like a training exercise they give kids from the college? They're so smart. Okay, so these kids are actually trying to be planners, they come to architecture, so they can planning students. Okay, super. That's a good bang for a buck.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
Thank you very much for coming out on your holiday.